Welcome to another edition of the Jerry Ratcliffe Show podcast. And it's my great pleasure today to continue our series with one of the great doctors over at UVA Sports Medicine and UVA Orthopedics, one of our sponsors. And we thank them so much for their support. Dr. Siobhan Statuta, who is no stranger to our podcast. She's been on several times and she has dealt a lot with the Runners Clinic over at UVA, but she's become very passionate about mental health. And we're going to address some of those topics today with Siobhan. And we welcome your thoughts on this. You won't be able to join us live on the podcast, but if you have any follow-up questions, you can email me at my website, and I can pass those along to Siobhan, and we can address those in a future podcast or perhaps even sooner by some platform. But anyway, without further ado, let me bring on Siobhan Statuta. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule, Siobhan, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Jerry. Thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to come on and have great conversations with you, and hopefully the listeners get to pick up a thing or two and find this to be beneficial too.
Yeah, and we've talked about mental health some in the past, and also running, and you're an expert in both those facets of our society today and health. And today we're going to deal mostly with the mental health thing, which has become really prominent, not only just at UVA and amongst the student body, but our population in general, which I think probably came to the forefront in the last Olympics, when a lot of the world-renowned athletes talked openly about they've had some mental health stresses and issues, and how addressing those has helped them not only as athletes, but it just their general health, and urge other people to seek it out too, to seek out help. And I think we all have our stresses and things that trigger those. But I think in our pre-podcast discussion, Siobhan, you mentioned that student athletes are arguably under more stress than the general public today, more than ever, or at least it's become more visible.
Yes.
Can you address that just a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry, I completely agree with you that especially, it really became prominent at the last Olympics just for athletes. But even I would argue before then, when COVID first started coming around and the people who were training for the upcoming Olympics didn't know if the Olympics were going to happen or not. And about that same time, Michael Phelps produced a documentary on HBO called The Weight of Gold. It's about 55 minutes long. For the listeners out there, if you have a chance to watch it, watch it. It is very eye-opening, very profound. It essentially, he narrates it, but he also has a number of his professional colleagues tell their stories. And you think that someone like Michael Phelps, who has won countless gold medals, is living the perfect life, but yet he talked about how once he got off of the trophy stand or the medal stand and the lights went out the day after the Olympics closed, he was left empty. And so he began to bring a spotlight to really shed light on this topic. And others like Simone Biles and others have really picked up on this and talked about it quite a bit. But with COVID, what the NCAA has found out is that the student athlete population, so they're looking at North American, they have 1.5 to 2 times greater the amount of mental health concerns or discussions, concerns about their mental health than prior to COVID. And so the NCAA has actually been really good about sending out periodic surveys. And so they've had hundreds of thousands of responses from from athletes Division I through Division III, and they have found, yeah, I mean, that there has been an increase in the number, in the degree of anxiety, of depression, um, and just the pressures that they've been under. What they have noticed, though, which is a little bit reassuring, is that this past fall, the rates of hopelessness have decreased since 2020, which is a hopeful, which is a great sign that everything's not as hopeless as that there is a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So you're absolutely right. These athletes trying to take off, continue their careers, trying to keep up with their academic work, trying to train, trying to keep everything going in the setting of COVID and additional external stressors. They're really in a pressure cooker, so to speak.
We're talking to Dr. Siobhan Statuta of UVA Sports Medicine, and Siobhan is now located over at the Ivy Mountain facility. If you follow our podcast, you've seen and listened to Dr. David Deduck's narration of the slideshow. We went through that facility. What an incredible facility. Everybody's under one roof there, and you guys can do a lot of crosswork with one another. You don't have to go to different buildings to see people. Everybody is right there, which I'm sure is very convenient for all of you. But Siobhan, with being connected with so many UVA athletes, how much have you noticed the increase in the stress just over the past, well, I guess just during COVID, which
Yeah.
has presented a whole new world of stress to everyone, but I guess particularly student athletes. How much more has that increased in your workload over the past several years?
Yeah, it is absolutely skyrocketed, Jerry. You're right. I see runners and I'm part of this sports orthopedic center, but when I'm not there, that's half of my time. The other half, I'm a primary care doctor, one of 3 primary care doctors for the UVA athletes. So my role is to sit in an office and we take care of, preventive care. We talk about vaccinations. We take care of, the lacerations that come in, the concussions, but we also handle rashes. We handle the mental health concerns. So it has absolutely skyrocketed since COVID. And I think that's multifactorial. I hope it's multifactorial. Number one, there's no doubt that COVID and the stressors of, is there going to be even college taking place? Are we going to be sent home? Is there going to be a sports season? What happens if X amount of teammates come down with COVID? Is our season going to be lost? All those pressures were present. But also, I wonder if the fact that we're beginning to talk about it more and more is absolutely making them feel more comfortable to come in and talk about their concerns. So my hope is that that is a component of it. But yeah, we have seen. So for example, in a half day of seeing athletes walk in for their concerns, I might have seen 1, maybe 2 with a mental health concern maybe 5 years ago. Now in half a day of clinic, it's not uncommon to see 6, 7 in a half day. And that's varying degrees of anxiety, depression, a lot of stressors going on there.
Other than COVID, why do you think that is? Do you think it's just our society?
I think it's our society. I think that I think Charlottesville has had a number of unfortunate events that have occurred here, which creates a unique and hopefully rare circumstance. You know, we've suffered multiple tragedy after tragedy and a lot of poor press due to varying reasons and triggers. And I also think that we are a university that is not only excellent in sports, but also demands excellence in academics. And so that in and of itself puts at student athletes at higher stress. Nationwide, you know, this is a very developmentally fertile age period. So you consider the 17 to 22-year-old age population. This is when they're supposed to be going out and creating their friends and maybe dating and maybe, you know, figuring out their careers and what's going to happen next. And it's just a very fragile, fertile time of their development. So I think it's multifactorial. I think it all adds up.
That's kind of a good segue into my next question is, obviously everybody is keenly aware of the tragedy back in early November of the 3 University of Virginia football players that were shot and killed, and another wounded, and another student wounded. And I guess it left a little bit of a hole in the heart of everyone in the community, UVA and the Charlottesville and college sports in general. But there's been a lot of fallout, I suppose, from that, not just amongst the football team and the coaches staff, but also trainers, doctors, student athletes in other sports, student population in general, faculty. A lot of you guys work closely with the athletes. What has been your experience in that facet of the tragedy, Siobhan? Just and how have you guys dealt with all that?
It's been it's funny to say this during an interview. It's almost been unspeakable. It is, you know, to watch these horrors play out on television at remote locations where you don't know the individuals. That's horrifying in and of itself. Then you add components of, wow, you know, I have little cousins, or those of us who are parents of little kids, or those of us who are parents of, you know, anybody in college or anyone. You can begin to relate it to you and really empathize as to how horrible it can be. But when you know these individuals on a one, you know, on a personal basis, it takes it to unfathomable levels of pain and distress. And that's everyone. And yes, the student athletes and the teams and the coaches, everyone is affected. The athletic trainers, the doctors, we're all affected because we're the ones that get the phone calls. We're the ones that have to take care of one another. And so how have we been able to do this? Well, I mean, I think that's where I'm blessed to say that I have amazing colleagues, where we have no hesitation to pick up the phone, text, call, at any hour of the day, and you know that person is going to pick up the phone. And having developed trust and respecting one another, you know that you're in a safe space with them. So just understanding every individual involved has their own filter which they're processing everything through. So somebody who may not have known these individuals might be having a very, very difficult time, and just understanding and respecting that space and trying to help one another to the best of our abilities. You know, everybody handles things differently. You know, we have our talkers, we have our criers, we have those that tend to internalize it and, for example, go running. And so I think just trying to keep ourselves open and available, yet gently offering each other distance and the space that they may need to figure out the next steps that everybody needs to take a step closer to healing. It has been remarkably difficult, and it is day by day. At the beginning, it was minute by minute, hour by hour, and just hopefully moving towards a space where we can eventually begin to, I don't know, you never move on from something like this. But speaking about it and speaking about mental health and making it destigmatized is essential. So making it okay for student athletes to come to us crying or upset and knowing that they're in a safe space to do that is crucial to this entire topic of mental health. And I think that's where the world is heading, even in UVA and outside of UVA.
And I guess even though it's remote, I guess a lot of the families of these students, not just student athletes, but I've had families from long distance reach out to me on Twitter, just concerned about their kids and just expressing concern. How do you? I don't even know how you go about dealing with that aspect of it as well, because it's far reaching, so far reaching. It's out of your control, but do you talk to some of the students or student athletes just about assuring their families, their parents, that they're okay? And
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, fears are real, no matter what, whether you agree with them or not. A fear is a fear, and so acknowledging, yes, I can understand that this is indeed really scary, particularly when somebody is not close by. So thinking about the general student population and parents that might live in California, for example, that can't just get in a car and drive to see their child, that you have to empathize and acknowledge, wow, their fears are legitimate to them. I think having and creating an environment of, hey, it's safe to come say what you need to say. If athletes needed us to speak to our to parents, we're always, we do that. And just supporting one another. Amazing to see how behind the scenes everybody came and has come together for one another. So athletic trainers, people who is so athletic trainers are there for the student athletes, but when they're struggling, the other athletic trainers are watching out for them and bringing them, elevating it, getting anybody the help that they need, and just knowing who to go talk to is key. So going back to the NCAA study that I talked about, one of the surveys, I think in 2021, in the 2021 survey, only 65% on average of student athletes knew where on their college campuses they could get mental health resources or help. And when asked whether they would feel comfortable themselves going, less than 50% said that they felt comfortable doing that. So again, it's listening for one another, telling teammates, hey, it's okay. If you have concerns for someone, our door is always open. It's confidential. Come get the help that your teammate, that your coach may need. We watch out for one another because we have to help one another together as a community to lift each other up.
did you mention when we were talking briefly off air that you were selected to go to New Zealand and Australia to do some mental health lectures?
I did. I was fortunate enough. So I went with the organization, the American Medical Society of Sports Medicine. Um, it's called the Traveling Fellowship, and I was one of two lucky individuals to be selected. And this trip was supposed to take place back in 2020, but due to COVID, New Zealand was shut down, and so they kept on postponing it. So we actually got to go in November. We added on Australia because there was a sports medicine conference going on there, and so I got to speak on screening tools for mental health in athletes that has been put out by a working group through the International Olympic Committee. And so what they did was, much like concussions, when somebody gets hit, there are tools that are available for people to assess, to further figure out, hey, could this be a real concussion going on? Certain questions, certain maneuvers to put someone through. Well, they took that approach and they applied it to mental health. And what they're looking for is this person suffering from anxiety or depression? Is there sleep disturbance? Is there alcohol? Is there drug misuse? Or is there disordered eating? So there's screening tools that are now available for, there are two styles of screening forms. There's one for medical providers, so athletic trainers, PAs, physicians, and psychologists. And then there's another one for the lay public, so for teammates, for coaches, for staff, to be able to have a resource and read and say, hey, I'm concerned about this. These are the next steps. This is what I would tell this person that I'm concerned about, and this is how I would plug them in to get the help that they need. So whenever any flag goes up in someone's head, it should not be ignored. Action should be taken to help, help that individual who may or may not be struggling. Just getting them in front of an individual, such as a team physician, to further have the conversation, to garner more information. That is the goal of it. It's not to diagnose, say, hey, you know what, you have this disorder, or you have that. No, it's to allow conversations to happen. So yes, that is what I was speaking on, and it was a fantastic once in a lifetime trip, I'll tell you that. So yes, I was lucky to go.
That's quite an honor, and I know the UVA community is very proud of you for being selected for that. That's awesome, and we're very happy for you. For those who might be struggling but don't know what to do about it, what tools are available, Siobhan, for just the average Joe out there who might need some help and need to talk to someone?
Yeah, I think being first aware enough to understand that they themselves are not okay is step one. And step two, once that acknowledgement has been made within their head, taking a step to talk to anyone would be perfect and ideal, but particularly reaching out to physicians, people in the medical community. I have oftentimes been seeing runners with stress fractures, and I just open, I'll throw out a question as to, how are you doing? It's been a tough year. I noticed that your mileage has really increased. Is everything okay? Are you, tell me a little bit more about this increase in mileage. And many of them use it as a method to handle mental health concerns and anxiety, for example. And it's something that they can control. And it just opens the door to having these conversations. So I would just encourage anybody who is listening to ask a question and seek help from a friend who is medical. Anybody around you can get you to the right person. There are, there's Region 10, there's UVA, there are these screening forms that can be found on Google. There are now, because of COVID, virtual therapists that you could reach out to online. So just seeking mental health help from anyone, having the conversation with somebody who can help you is the essential key.
Yeah, I saw I think it was a study in Japan that just came out that said the one way to combat mental health issues in teenagers is through exercise. And at first I would say, duh, because didn't we know this like 30 years ago? But I guess that's one way of doing it, right?
Well, I think that's a tactic that can help. I mean, we know exercise gets you outdoors. That helps. Being outside can help. you get your endorphin rush, your post-exercise endorphin rush. It helps some people process and reflect on their days and kind of come up with strategies. But yet sometimes the mental health concern is bigger than just running to exercise. It is oftentimes a chemical, it's a response to a chemical, I don't want to say imbalance, but a chemical shift or a chemical circumstance that predisposes individuals. So there are genetic components to this. And no matter how hard someone is exercising, they may still struggle. So yes, there are a lot of things that are available. There are apps on the phone that you can do. For example, Calm is an app that you can download and it can talk you through mindfulness and deep breathing, and yoga is a great option. Other people prefer more of the adrenaline rush in running and sports. So, but beginning to be aware of oneself and understanding, hey, you know what? I'm not motivated. I'm not myself. I'm not excited to go to work anymore. This is now affecting me in many venues of my life. And acknowledging, hey, that's real. I'm going to talk to my friend. I'm going to talk to a safe person, and begin by actually saying the words out loud. That is important.
We are wrapping up our segment with Dr. Siobhan Statuta of UVA Sports Medicine, and we've been talking a lot about mental health. Some of it's been very eye-opening. Some of it's a little depressing, as you might expect. But let's go out on a little brighter note. Siobhan, it's that time for New Year's resolutions. What should we be careful about in those? Should we not be making resolutions that we can't keep, or is that just part of who we are?
Well, that's funny because you have two distinct approaches out there that I have seen. You have the people who are like, well, it's New Year's and I always make resolutions and I never keep them, so I'm not going to even do it this year. This is a great time of year, no matter what, whether you've had success in the past, to try to set yourself a goal, whether it is physical, whether it's social, whether it's mental, but make it attainable, make it reachable. So something that is objectively measurable. So if you want to lose weight, not saying, hey, I want to lose weight, or not saying I want to lose 20 pounds, but just saying, okay, I want to lose 20 pounds in a year. So ideally, I would lose half of that by summer. So I'd like to lose 1, maybe 2 pounds a month. And this is how I'm going to do it. So really writing it down and breaking each piece down into small attainable goals. We live in a community that is so wonderfully geared towards activities and outdoors. And so we have an amazing running community, so many 5Ks out there, whether people want to run them or walk them. The people who participate in these races are really fun, very supportive. So really easy to gain a network of support with that. And then, but yes, I mean, I think taking stock of, okay, these are my resolutions. This year I'm going to take self-care because the last couple of years have been really hard. So taking care of yourself allows you to be a better version of yourself so that you can be there for others. So really kind of allowing yourself the grace to take care of yourself. That's sleep, that's exercise, that's food, and then having sustaining relationships. So all of this is a great time, no matter whether you've been successful or not in the past with resolutions. It's a great time of the year to take stock as to what happened the last year and what ideally would you want to attain in this upcoming year.
Great advice. Great advice from Siobhan Statuta. We really appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule to give us your expertise on so many topics. And she's world renowned now. She's been all over the globe.
I don't know about that.
But you're getting some great free advice from an expert. So I hope you take advantage and listen carefully to what she has advised to us. And we wish you a very prosperous and healthy new year, and we'll have you back on sometime in the near future, Siobhan. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me, Jerry. Take care now.
Okay, you too.